I want to welcome you to the Community Foundation's Donor COVID-19 update and how you can help. We're so happy you're here joining us for our very first donor education session with Zoom. I'm Emily Thompson, and I'm the Director of Donor Services at CFGG, and I'm happy to facilitate this conversation today. We're fortunate to have many wonderful professionals on the Zoom, and they will go in depth about the needs in our community and how we can all help. We hope to do these education sessions regularly, especially as our lives might be a little bit slower right now, and we have time to connect and learn about the wonderful things happening in this community. A few things to note, like I said, please mute your microphone. One thing we really want you all to know is that we are recording this, so we will share it on our website and social media after we are finished with this. Also, to help us run a little bit efficiently, we're going to ask that you put any questions that you have in the chat box down at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer those questions at the end of this session as time permits. So let's get started. First, I'm going to ask that our president of the Community Foundation, Walker Sanders, give you a brief welcome and overview of all the things happening in the county over the last 3 weeks. Walker has been in this role at CFGG for 20 years and knows Greensboro better than any of us. Walker has worked tirelessly behind the scenes to secure funding from many of our corporate friends and community members for the Foundation's Emergency Response Fund. He's on weekly calls with our elected and city leaders and the leaders of our nonprofits and community groups. Walker, thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you.
My picture went away and I couldn't find my button to push the mute, so I apologize for that. I was actually kind of chuckling when I was able to see some of our staff pictures. We've been doing so many Zoom calls. It's nice to see everybody showered and fresh and ready for a nice fancy call with different backgrounds. I can't believe it. Everyone looks so good, and it's great to see all of you if it's not virtually. We are certainly living in some crazy times, and the 20 years that I've been with the foundation, we've seen a lot of different things happen, and one thing that's inspiring when we get into these very difficult situations is how our community comes together and really responds. We've have historically always worked closely with each other, and I think in this time it's even more apparent of how I think people have come together in so many different ways. And this is such a different environment that we're living in. And, I can remember back to when 9/11 happened, the major crisis and the feeling that was out in the community, and how we came together and once working with the United Way and putting together resources and working with the New York Community Trust up in New York and the United Way up there as well, followed by the Great Recession in 2008, which was almost a huge gut punch that was out of our control, but how the community really came together to respond, again, working with the United Way and some other major corporations and foundations to do some things to help provide a bridge for folks to ride through that recession. When the tornado hit a few years ago, how we quickly came together and raised the dollars necessary for that community. And now we're in this situation. And what makes this so different than other things that we've been in is there's an emotional effect to it that's different. In that it affects all of us. This sounds odd to say this, and I don't mean it to sound bad, but when a hurricane hits or a tornado hits our community, we know where it is, and we know the community that's affected, and we know what type of resources need to be raised to work with that particular community. It's finite. We can get our hands around it and we can address it. This is unknown. We don't know what we're in. And it's not just one community versus another community. It's not rich, it's not poor, it's not white, it's not black. It's everybody. And that creates a lot of uncertainty. And so a lot of what I've been proud to see happening in Greensboro is that people have come together in a lot of different ways and coordinating all the various things that we're working with. The United Way's Virus Relief Fund and the way that our Emergency Response Fund has supported that, and the joint task force that they've created with doing that, the role that the Nonprofit Consortium has played in understanding the needs and the resources that this community has, and looking at Piedmont Business Capital, which is our only CDFI located here in Greensboro that we create to provide support for neighborhoods and individuals, going people to people. It's an amazing array of folks that are coming together each day. Just last week, I received a call from a local corporation, United Healthcare, that was working closely to try to figure out how they could retain many of their cafeteria workers now that There are over 2,000 employees are all working remotely. They came up with the idea they could use their cafeteria workers to prepare meals and then have the local nonprofits distribute those meals throughout the community. Within 24 hours, we were able to facilitate a meeting with 8 different groups and coordinate how many meals that they needed, both prepared for families and individual box lunches. And as of yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock, when I was about 3:30, when I was able to speak to them, over 1,000 meals were being picked up and distributed to families across this community. And it just really makes you feel good about the community we live in and the folks that are here. So the purpose of this call is to really share much more of this information and to give you the information you need and provide a forum for you to ask questions of us and of our staff that are on the grounds working with these nonprofits that are doing the day-to-day work that this community needs. So we appreciate everybody being here. We appreciate you being part of the Community Foundation, or to meeting more of these conversations in the future. Thank you, Emily, for facilitating the discussion. I look forward to listening in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Walker. There's so much happening in Greensboro, and I really don't know how you keep it all straight. So thank you for that. Next up, we have Steve Hayes, who probably needs no introduction. Steve is the director of our Nonprofit Consortium. Steve will tell us a little bit about the survey that the Nonprofit Consortium has issued to our nonprofits and received almost 130 responses from. So Steve, if you will.
Thanks so much, Emily. And I appreciate what Walker said about this being uncharted territory. It's particularly uncharted for nonprofits. The mission of the consortium is to build up our nonprofit community through training, through building bridges between nonprofits and coordinating services, and then in lifting up the needs of the community and letting the community know what nonprofits are doing to respond to those needs. So we didn't want to presume that we knew the answers to what nonprofits needed in order to be successful in this new uncharted territory. And so we did a survey of our membership. One thing that was incredibly gratifying is that we had almost 50% response rate from our membership, 133 responses, which is, I think, pretty darn good by any measure. And so we had some results that were surprising and some that were not so surprising. And I want to talk a little bit about what we found out from the survey, who responded, and then how the consortium has tried to respond to that survey. The first question we asked was, what type of impact do you think this is going to have on your services? And as you can see, unsurprisingly, 80% of our membership are expecting a major disruption to the services and staffing. I think there's 2% who think it will have little or no impact, that we call that the denial cohort over there on the end, because we do expect all of us will be impacted by this. The next question that we asked is, what specifically do you expect to see impacted? And the number one response, unfortunately, was the cancellation of the programs and services that we deliver. Second would be budgetary response, the impact for more funding. Folks were afraid that there'll be disruptions in staffing due to absences, and also the lack of volunteers. Organizations such as Senior Resources that rely heavily on volunteers to carry out their mission has already seen a depletion in those numbers. This is the spring, and many nonprofits use this time of year for their fundraising events, and almost half of them said they would be canceling those events this spring. Most of our members have said that they expect to see a decrease in the ability to carry out their services, but we also see there's going to be an increased demand for the services. And then disruption from vendors, and we've seen that in supply chain, in just getting the resources that nonprofits need in order to carry out their mission. The next question that we asked is, what can local funders do to support you? And there were a couple of things that were non-surprising. Number one, folks felt like funding would help, especially operational costs to cover payroll, to cover things other than direct service programming. But they did ask for funding in order to continue the home visits. They asked for access to technology so that they can continue to contact their clients, their staff, their volunteers. They asked for us specifically to use webinars in order to push information out and to give them the ability to contact each other. And then finally, a lot of them asked for just conference calling ability to get to their staff. It's important to know that our membership ranges from volunteer organizations like Horse Friends, which is an all volunteer program, to very large nonprofits like hospice. And so the budget ranges from zero to more than $1 million a year. And this is important when I show you the next slide that relates to budget, and that is the operating reserves of nonprofits. So if you will look, you will see that 22% of the nonprofits that responded have no operating reserve. They operate on a month-to-month basis, and 50% had only 1 to 3 months of operating reserves. Now that would probably not be surprising for a smaller organization, but we were able, and by the way, I need to thank Crystal Maurer for this presentation and for drilling down on the data. And she was able to drill down specifically and look at those larger organizations, the ones whose budget is greater than $1 million a year. And just of the ones who responded to this survey, there are 25 organizations in Guilford County with a budget, an operating budget of over $1 million a year that have less than 3 months of operating reserve. So that's a little staggering, and it could have major economic impact on our economy further down the road. Next, we asked, and I think this is important, it's called the taxonomy, but it's really just what do you do? The consortium serves not just organizations like IRC or Partners Ending Homelessness or Urban Ministry. We have arts organizations, animal welfare organizations, economic development organizations, and you'll see that the responses come across the board. 15% of our responses came from the arts, came from culture and humanities. So the impact will be not just on those frontline responders to this crisis. We will also see this impact on all of the other nonprofits. Even if it's not immediate, it will be later down the road. So our response as a consortium needs to be long-term and understand that we need to have a marathon response to make sure that we're hitting the needs of all the nonprofits in the community. So, yeah, I think that's the last of the slides here. We talked about how can we respond, and one of the things that Walker encouraged us to do is to go back to our mission, which is that our mission statement is ask for what you need, give what you can. And so we wanted to provide a way for nonprofits to support each other and at the same time to let the community know what services they needed. And so we have posted on our website a COVID-19 resource page. There are 2 login buttons there. The first one is a way for a consortium member to log in and to tell the community and to tell other nonprofits what their needs are. So if a nonprofit were to log in here, they could ask for up to 3 items at a time. They may ask for a product they need. So for example, if a nonprofit is working in a particular neighborhood and they need baby bottles or they need diapers, they can go in, they can indicate the area in which they're serving, Greensboro, High Point, Guilford County wide. They can enter the product that they need, and they can even put a link to Amazon or where you can find it and an approximate cost. And a community member could directly order it, or a funder could see that it's out there, or another nonprofit could say, hey, we have that, we can share it. They may also ask for services. So a lot of our nonprofits have told us that during this uncertain time, they need some legal guidance. And so they can ask for that here. They can ask for accounting support. They can ask for IT support. And if they do that, then we at the consortium will start working with the consultants who are members of the consortium to see if we can find some pro bono, or as we like to say, low bono, services for them. And then finally, if there is a need for direct funding, our nonprofit can go in and they can ask for direct funding for a program that they have or for operational costs. The contact person is in there, and so if you wanted to respond to a need in the community, you could order a product and have it shipped directly to that nonprofit. The third button that was on there was just a list of nonprofit of the nonprofit needs. And I wanted to show you that. There are only 3 in there right now because we're being overly cautious. You have to be a consortium member and to log in and ask for things. And that's not because we want you necessarily, to feel like you have to join the consortium. In fact, we'll waive membership fees if you are a nonprofit and want to post your needs on here. We just want to make sure that those organizations that posted are legitimate 501c3 nonprofits, and we have some type of control over who's on here. We can vet them and saying, yes, they are providing services in Guilford County. And so a member of the community, if you see an organization listed up here, it's not the good housekeeping seal of approval. It just means, yes, they are a 501c3 and they do serve in our community. So that portal, we believe, along with the survey that we've done, has sort of given us a snapshot and then a way to capture the ongoing needs of nonprofits as this crisis unfolds. We have, if you go to our website and you want to look, moved all of our training into virtual training. It is webinar based, and we are currently doing roundtables and seminars for our nonprofit members to help them access much of the federal funding that's available. Yesterday, we held a roundtable with executive directors. 25 executive directors were able to speak with a banker on how to prepare for the PPP program. We'll be doing that again Thursday with Arts Greensboro. And next week, we'll be working with the Guilford County Community Care Network to provide that same training for our health caring organizations, both in Greensboro and in High Point. We will continue to do these roundtables for no other reason than to let folks who work in the nonprofit field connect with each other. It was really rewarding yesterday just to hear folks say, this is how I'm doing, this is how I'm feeling, and to have colleagues to respond and say, hey, I'm in the same boat, you're not alone. So that's the mission of the consortium, is to let folks know they are not alone and that we can build bridges to address this crisis together. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Steve. I think I can speak for everyone when I say thank you for all that you and Crystal are doing. You are doing great work for this community and for so many individuals and groups, so thank you. Again, if any of you have questions for Steve, Walker, or Tara and Kevin, who are coming right up, you can ask it in the chat box and I will put a message in there so that you can see where that is in case you're not sure where that is. Now we're going to hear from Kevin Lundy and Tara Sandercock. Kevin is the Director of Grantmaking Programs at the Community Foundation, and Tara is CFGG's Senior Vice President for Foundation and Community Relations. Tara and Kevin will tell us some highlights of the wonderful ways we are supporting our nonprofits and what the emergency response funds are supporting. So Kevin and Tara.
Thank you so much, Emily. Good morning, everyone. And Tara and I and the entire group are really happy to be here with you today. I'd like to start off giving thanks especially to Steve Hayes and Crystal with the consortium. As you can hear, they've done some extraordinary work and are hands and feet on the ground during this time of crisis. And along with that, thanks the folks who are on the ground around the city, making things run day in, day out, daytime, nighttime, and to our nonprofit professionals. I know there are several of you on the call, and nothing but love and respect and admiration for all that you are doing day in and day out. So just wanted to start with that note of thanks and appreciation. And so echoing Walker's comments from earlier, for over 100 years, community foundations around the country have been active in helping to facilitate critical support during times of crisis. Can I get confirmation that you can see the slides on the screen? A thumbs up maybe from those of you. Fantastic. So in these times of crisis, as you'll see some images on the screen, these are just from the last couple years of earthquakes, like in Puerto Rico, wildfires in California, the East Greensboro tornado, and now coronavirus. Community foundations and foundations, donors, people in our communities are coming together in really extraordinary ways. Part of what I wanted to share today is just sharing that we want you to know that your community foundation is here today, and we will be here providing critical support and connections for both the immediate and the long term. As has been mentioned, this long-term recovery, we don't know what it will look like. We don't know how long it will last, but we know this will have significant implications for many months, if not years, to come. And so to start off, wanted to share some ways that in the immediate term that we are supporting and checking in with our current and recent grantees here at the Community Foundation. So first off, we sent a message to about almost 100 current and recent grantees a couple weeks back, as soon as things started rolling out that there were going to be closures, letting organizations know that if they have a grant with the Community Foundation that was for a direct project or program, we are certainly interested in having conversations about changing and shifting that grant to be a general operating support grant, because as Steve mentioned, that general operating support is critical. And these items that I'm sharing here are in direct response to the consortium survey findings and what we're hearing from nonprofits and our grantees. We're also extending reporting time frames for granting that, during this time, one of the last things we want grantees to be thinking about is completing or filling out a form for us. They need to be doing what they're doing. And we have complete trust in what they're doing. We also wanted to offer Zoom meeting licenses. So video conferencing meeting license, much as a license that enabled us all to be on this call today. We heard from organizations that as they were adapting their business models, that they needed support in helping to work in a different way, whether that be frontline workers on the ground, folks doing case management, thinking about how you would do case management, a video conferencing solution being really helpful in that. For leadership teams to get together and make decisions, really helpful. So we started off making 50 Zoom licenses available to organizations, and we probably have 80% of those that have been taken now, offers that have been taken up. So we're closing in on 40 nonprofit organizations around town who are taking us up on that offer. Connections to resources and information, much of those through the consortium that Steve mentioned, helping organizations as they look into SBA loans, other resources from the federal government, including the payroll protection program that you may have heard about, providing loan support to nonprofits to cover payroll who are keeping on during this difficult time. And those are loans that will turn into forgivable loans over time. So some really extraordinary opportunities there. And we also have an emergency response fund that Tara is going to touch on earlier. But in these messages to grantees, a lot of what we are trying to do is affirming that each of them as human beings are extraordinarily valuable, and that we are all in this together, I think is one of the big messages that we wanted to be sure that they had, and that we are in constant communication. So moving to how you can help. I know that's one of the big items for conversation today. I'll just kind of generally walk through this list at a high level, and Tara, then I'll hand things off to Tara and she'll dig in a bit deeper. But first, providing unrestricted grant support directly to nonprofit organizations. We feel that that is an extraordinary way, and one of the best ways to help during this time of crisis. Organizations that have, whether they've been around for 2 years, 3 years, or 50 years, organizations in our community are doing some extraordinary work. Many of these organizations you already have relationships with. And another piece of advice there, organizations that you have deep relationships with and trust, continue to provide funding to those organizations while learning about new organizations. And while we are all feeling perhaps there's a natural tendency to draw back a little bit during this time of uncertainty, we encourage going the other way, really leaning in, as individuals, as organizations, as a community, we feel like that's how we can move forward together in the best way possible. Next, our CFGG Emergency Response Fund, or the United Way Virus Relief Fund. Just touch briefly on that because Tara will be getting into detail there here shortly. The Guilford Nonprofit Consortium Needs Portal that Steve mentioned, a great resource for nonprofits and for community members alike who are interested in providing support, whether that be through donation or financial support or otherwise. We also have the Greensboro Mutual Aid Fund that we have been partnering on as of late. And this fund, in general, it serves to accumulate and share money to grassroots community mutual aid groups in Greensboro. So much like the consortium is a mutual aid organization for nonprofits, this mutual aid fund is a mutual aid network of folks around the city of Greensboro who are collectively pooling their dollars to give what they need, or give what they can rather, and ask for what they need. So that's a really special group. And we'll be sharing more information on each of these resources with you after the call today. So we'll have links to information on each of these, just FYI. Next, the Piedmont Business Capital Business Continuity Fund. This Small Business Continuity Fund has been established to make 0% loans of up to $10,000 to existing businesses with payback term of roughly 48 to 60 months. Piedmont Business Capital, the CDFI that Walker mentioned earlier, has put in $150,000 into this effort. The city has put in somewhere close to $400,000. Nonprofit organizations are eligible to request funds from Piedmont Business Capital for this purpose. A really wonderful resource there. And there are ways that you could support that fund as well. If you would like to add to the Business Continuity Fund and to that loan fund, Wilson Lester would certainly love to speak with you, and we'll share more information after the call. And quickly, I'll move through these last few. The Guilford Education Alliance Laptop Fund. As you may know, the Guilford Education Alliance is a nonprofit here in town that galvanizes the community in support of quality public education for all of our students. And the Education Alliance is, as its name connotes, an alliance of people and organizations investing time, talent, and resources in the support of our Guilford County schools. And as you may have heard on a news article or through email or through the Alliance directly, with schools being closed, there is a profound need for close to some 10,000 students who need access to technology at home, who do not have access to a laptop or an iPad or anything like that. And so the Guilford Education Alliance has established a laptop fund for this project with the goal of purchasing 5,000 to 10,000 laptops for Guilford County school students who otherwise wouldn't have access to technology. So this will help while they're out of school to be able to continue through with learning and assignments as best they're able to in a virtual environment. Next, the Greensboro Artist Relief Fund. As a musician on the side, this is one that holds a special place in my heart and of interest. as well. The Arts Greensboro, our partner, has launched an Artist Emergency Relief Fund to help folks in our community who have lost income generating or income and revenue and lost those activities during the crisis. As you know, many folks have been losing income from gigs, events, cultural programs, closing of businesses. We've seen many of these folks on our social media accounts playing shows online that we know and love, some of our favorite musicians even in some cases. This is a special fund for local artists and a great way for you to provide support to our local artist community. Number 8, if you're interested in volunteering and getting out while socially distancing and providing support, the Volunteer Center of the Triad is a great coordinating entity, recently expanded from serving Greensboro to the entire Triad and providing volunteer opportunities. We would encourage you to visit their website, volunteercentertriad.org, and learn more about the volunteer opportunities in our community. And finally, as many of you I know are already doing, random acts of kindness. This isn't so much tightly on the grant making element, if you will, but random acts of kindness, whether it's your social distancing and the mail carrier, the letter carrier comes to your door. A little something special for the letter carrier, perhaps. Or mobile meals, making a meal delivery. The pizza delivery, if you have food delivery coming to your house, if you're going to a grocery store, again, the frontline workers who are out and about each and every day making things go. If it is putting up a sign, as you see in the top right corner, there is a light in everybody. This is a sign created by our very own Emily Thompson's family, son Charlie, bringing light and joy into the community, into yards around. There are a number of ways to show love and support and kindness during this period of stress for many, and would encourage you to do that, to start that, to continue that as we're all in this together. And so to talk a little bit more in depth about the Emergency Response Fund at the Community Foundation with a little bit more detail, I'll turn things over to my wonderful colleague, Tara.
Good morning, everyone. This Emergency Response Fund operates in alignment with the Virus Relief Fund that is at United Way of Greater Greensboro. We are doing this enabled us to collaborate and to pool funds. We also had templates for things like applications, the overall process for allocating dollars that we were able to start up here and hit the ground running instead of starting from scratch to figure out a way that the allocation process could be done. So all of our gifts that are coming into this fund are pooled with the United Way dollars, and we work together to assess needs in the community, identify gaps and opportunities, and then allocate accordingly. So Kevin, if you could go to the next slide, please. The Virus Relief Fund is co-chaired by United Way and the City of Greensboro. The task force that has been put together by United Way is comprised of 18 community leaders representing 6 priority areas that I'll get to in a second, as well as general community needs. Our board member of the Community Foundation, Jose Oliva, and myself are serving on the task force. And the priority areas that we are allocating dollars in are there on the screen. Those include food insecurities, education interruptions, employment reductions, housing vulnerabilities, access to medical care, and business disruption, such as resources for small businesses as well as nonprofits. These we have already seen applications come forward in each of these areas. Last week was the first week of receiving applications, and 19 applications were received in week 1 by Monday of that week. And then by Thursday of the week, we had reviewed all of the requests and allocated $450,000 from the fund.
Tara, I think we missed that very last part there. Mhm.
23 applications have been received for review this week. I'm sorry, you all, that the audio is not very good. The collaborative is an effort that has funding from various foundations from around the state that is, makes grants to Latino-led organizations. And we are in the process of implementing some rapid response grants for operating dollars to go out probably within the next week or so to Latino-led organizations from around the state. So that's a wonderful collaborative with Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation, Mary Reynolds Babcock, Oak Foundation, and Weaver Foundation locally. The United Healthcare Food Partnership that was mentioned earlier is underway as of yesterday. The first food pickup is happening, so we've been helping to coordinate a group of nonprofits that are able to pick up those meals and distribute those out directly to folks. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that our very own staff giving circle at CFGG is looking at ways that we can take our resources and do something wonderful to help with meeting the needs of the community at this time. Ethan Lindsay on our staff is our facilitator for that project, and so we're looking at some options on how we can make a grant or grants to help community situation. We've also had donations from some of our other giving circles at the Community Foundation to go into the Emergency Response Fund, and that has been greatly appreciated. So just to summarize, I want to say thank you to everyone who has already supported these efforts through your Community Foundation, and we're here to help think about other options for you as we go through this process. It's a joy and honor, really, even in this unimaginably difficult time, to help support our fund holders, our donors in helping make their goals come true, and to help our nonprofits in meeting these needs. So thanks very much for the time.
Thank you, Tara, for that. And I am going to move on to questions. We have a couple questions in the chat box. I have a couple private, and then there's one that's to everyone, but I'm going to ask the question in case there's anyone who's on the phone who can't read the chat box. How are nonprofits, and this is for Steve or Crystal, if you would like to also respond, how are nonprofits responding to the decrease in volunteers right now?
Well, one of the things that Kevin mentioned was the volunteer center of the Triad. And so when we are approached by nonprofits, we tell them about the partnership that we have with the volunteer center for recruiting new volunteers. With senior resources, an example, they relied on mostly other seniors for delivering mobile meals. And that is a group that is at risk and shouldn't be doing that. So what we did was we put them in contact with the volunteer center, but also put them in touch with Leadership Greensboro. We're looking for opportunities to volunteer in the community. They can either contact Volunteer Center or feel free to contact us, and we can put them in contact with other organizations.
Very good, thank you. One thing I want to add from the chat box that Jean posted was having acts of kindness is to pay for your house cleaner or other service providers that you're not receiving this month. And that's a great suggestion, Jean. Thank you for sending that in. Another question that we received is how our CFGG emergency fund and how is the United Way of Greensboro, how are those funds being distributed? And Tara, you may have covered this in when you were breaking up a little bit, but how do we decide who gets funding and where are the applications from and how do they determine the greatest need?
Excellent questions. The task force of 18 folks that represents the broad community as well as those 6 areas. Is my audio okay?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'm going just to audio so that maybe that'll help. That group reviews the applications and scores them on a variety of dimensions, and all of those scores are compiled, and the group looks across then a slate of those scores and looks at how that matches up with the needs that we have been monitoring. Each week we receive critical updates on each of those 6 priority areas so that we can look at assessing those needs, identifying the gaps and opportunities. And so that's how that process is working. The goal is to have a consensus then on the final slate of applicants. This week, each week feels like a year, doesn't it? This week, I think may be more challenging because we have been asked for more dollars than we have available. So, we're trying to juggle giving out the grants along with, monitoring what the size of the fund. So Walker and others are out there continuing to raise dollars, and so we're kind of on a minute-to-minute basis to know how much is available to give out. Did I answer the question?
Yes, I think that's great, Tara.
Okay. Thanks.
If anyone else has any questions, please put them in the chat box. I think we're getting ready to wrap this up. I do want to remind everyone that we are recording this, and so it will be available to go back and look at it again, or to forward to some friends who you think might want to know some of these ways that they can also help, who weren't able to be here today. We're also, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, planning a series of these. We would love to do one again next week, and are asking for your suggestions of what you would like to hear about, how we can be helpful to you as a person that is close to CFGG. So please reach out to one of us and let us know if you have any suggestions. I'm going to put up the contact information here, or Phelps will do that for us, of our Development and Donor Services team. We are always happy to assist you in anything you might need. We're always here, like I said, just email or call us. And if no one else has any other questions, we want to say thank you for being here and hope you are all well.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.